spiral to pull
Making
themselves
up
out.
your mind to do it too.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, now, the baby boomer generation's coming online over 65.
Right.
All of your research in the initial stages didn't deal with people 85 years old.
Right.
But there are thousands of us now.
Mm-hmm.
We need to be physically alert, we need to be exercised, but we also need to find some outlet of creativity.
Right.
And difference making.
Right.
What does your research say to people who are not tennis players and golfers now, but
right.
you've got something to give to the world? How do
right.
you address them?
Right. I think that is an important lifelong challenge, but especially in late life where you have an opportunity to really be generative and have a lasting impact. And I think that using positive emotions as your guide to figuring out where you can best make a contribution is a great way to start, to see what makes you come alive more. One of the things that I think is really fascinating is that there's research to show that older people are actually have a better intuitive grasp of the importance of positive emotions relative to younger people. And that I think there's a great sort of life lesson about wisdom perhaps in that, and that other generations could have a lot to learn by understanding more about how is it that through a life of experience people come to value and appreciate positive emotions more than they did before.
Recently I had my hands on a book written by a faculty member in the medical school at Duke.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a paper on the impact of your attitude toward getting well, curing after surgery. And he feels, although it's a highly debatable argument, I judge, but he seems and felt that his experiences as a surgeon had shown that if you have these, you're so much better off.
Right.
Taking it out of the medical scene into the daily living that's really what you're saying.
Right, right. And we've studied different ways in which positive emotions affect the physical body. We've looked at recovery from cardiovascular excitement. So if you're feeling afraid or nervous, that's going to raise your blood pressure, raise your heart rate. We've discovered that the fastest way to quell that sort of disturbance of cardiovascular activity is to switch your attention to positive emotions, that there's a quicker way to sort of hit a reset button and kind of bring you back down to normal. We're now looking at some of the hormonal effects of positive emotions, and this is really just very early data suggests that there are big effects on the immune system, big effects on likelihood of getting upper respiratory infections. People who experience more positive emotions are really steeped in a different stew, if you want to put it that way.
Well, you also, when you look behind the expression of that emotion, sometimes what you really are hearing is the trouble that particular person has with himself or herself.
Right.
The anger is not always what it seems.
Right.
The animosity is not always what it seems, because self-doubt and self-hate enter into a lot of this, does it not?
Right. And the key sort of feature that seems to go along with positive emotions, again, is this open heart, open mind, and that rather than sort of defending a particular view of self, people in positive emotional states seem to be more open to feedback about themselves that might question their initial view of themselves. There's just a greater openness, more of a permeability that allows people to sort of flexibly interact with their world rather than sort of more rigidly interact with their world.
You find religion a big factor here?
We're beginning to look at that, and one of my graduate students right now is really interested in how emotions relate to self-transcendence, seeing yourself as part of something larger. And I think that is a way in which we're going to be able to understand sort of the how emotions fit into people's religious and spiritual experiences.
All right, now you're giving a luncheon talk to my civic club.
Okay.
None of us has heard a thing about Barbara Fredrickson's work, except we know what the title is.
Uh-huh.
What are your rules to me as an average citizen to move myself away from this orbit of problem and doubt and
Right,
trust.
right.
What are some simple things I can do?
Right. Well, I think that one thing to recognize is that whether you experience positivity or positive emotions it comes down to a choice a lot of times. And they are states that are so easy to squash or just, you know, miss completely. And so there needs to be sort of, I think good advice is to recognize how you have a lot of control over whether you're going to appreciate the good in your surroundings or not, or become fascinated in something, that's really a choice of just being open or not. And when we realize how much control we have of it, I like to talk about how, you know, if I ride the bus from home to campus, I can either start feeling like, oh, wow, I get to read this book instead of, you know, watch traffic, you know, and I get to see my favorite fountain on the way on the bus route, and the bus is free, and, you know, and I can think those kinds of thoughts and feel really grateful and upbeat. Or I could think, this takes longer than if I was driving, and these people are talking too loud, and, you know, so there are ways in which, you know, just your way of narrating your experiences
and you never really appreciate how much that impacts all the people around you.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sorry that we don't have more time, Dr. Fredrickson, but it's been a sheer delight to listen to you and hear what your research is saying. And friends, I know you've enjoyed meeting this very interesting and dynamic personality, Keenan Professor at Chapel Hill, Barbara Fredrickson. Until next week then, good night.
Sponsored in part by Wachovia, helping North Carolina people realize their financial goals since 1879. And through the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting UNC TV.